Will we have bodies when we go to heaven? This is a great question to ask. Will we have bodies when we go to heaven? I don't want to talk about that today. I'm going to be walking around a little bit because I just turned 48 and my back is a little stiff this morning. I think it's going to feel better to walk around than it is to sit in my office chair today. But if we want to start addressing this question, what we really should start is to turn to Scripture. What does Scripture tell us? And thankfully, Scripture gives us some really good clues as to whether we will have a body or not in the afterlife. And just the short answer, I want to tell you, I think is very clear. Scripture tells us that we will not be spirits, we will have a body. In 1 John chapter 3, verse 2, it says, "Dear friends, we are already God's children, but He has not yet shown us what He will be like when Christ appears. But we do know that we will be like Him." So, if we're going to be like Jesus, remember, Jesus rose from the grave on the third day. He didn't rise as a ghost. He rose in a physical body, and He went to great lengths to prove to His disciples that He was indeed a physical person. They could touch Him, He could touch them, and He could eat food, and that's not something a ghost can do, He said. He was a physical person living in a physical body, although that body was different. So we don't know exactly what we will be like, but we know it will be a physical body. Then in Philippians chapter 3, verse 21, we find another clue. It says, "He will take our weak mortal bodies and change them into glorious bodies like His own, using the same power with which He will bring everything under His control." And so there again, we see that we will have a physical body that will be like Jesus' body. Now, remember that His glorified body was not like, it was similar to the bodies that we currently have, only it was new and improved. You could say it was the human body 2.0, right? Because He could do things that we can't currently do. He could appear and disappear without, it doesn't matter. For instance, the disciples who were still afraid that they were going to lose their lives because they were following Jesus and He'd just been crucified. So they hid themselves in the upper room and all of the doors were locked. And yet suddenly Jesus appeared among them, and He could also disappear among them. We can't do that in our bodies now, but perhaps in bodies 2.0, in our new resurrected bodies, we will be able to do things like that. But Jesus also was able to ascend into heaven. So will we be able to do that? We don't know for sure. But if we're looking at Jesus as the example of what our resurrected, glorified bodies are going to be like, imagine the possibilities. Now, one thing, here's an illustration. I hope it is helpful for you. Many people don't realize this, but I'm colorblind. I just had my eyes checked the other day, and they told me, "Do you know you're colorblind?" I was like, "Yeah, I've known that almost all my life." Now, people will ask me sometimes, "Well, what do you see?" And it's hard to explain. I don't see in black and white. I see colors. I can look at these beautiful stained glass windows here in the sanctuary, and I see the colors that are there. But I think I don't see colors as vividly as you do if you are not colorblind. The things that really affect me is sometimes colors like blue and green and black and navy blue, those colors that are kind of close to each other, they kind of don't, they sometimes get mixed together for me. I don't see them and I could confuse them. I know one day I was going to sing in a concert with a quartet, and everybody said, "Hey, let's wear a blue shirt." Well, I came up that day wearing a green shirt, which I thought was blue. And they were like, "I thought we said we were going to wear green shirts." And I said, "I thought this is a green shirt." And they're like, "No, that's a blue shirt." So, I see colors, but I don't see them as vividly as someone who is not colorblind. And I often wonder, what do you see? How do you see colors? Wouldn't it be amazing for me to be able to see the beautiful colors of God's world through your eyes if your eyes are not colorblind? You can try to describe it to me all day long, but it's just not going to really register to me unless I can actually see it for myself. Well, that's an illustration, I think, of what we're looking forward to in heaven. The kingdom of heaven, we're going to be made perfect. All of our senses will be made absolutely perfect, so that I will be able to see colors that I could never see in this earth. Not only will I see the same colors that a non-colorblind person can see, how many colors might exist that none of us on earth were ever able to experience? Because you see, our bodies right now are affected by the fall of humanity from grace. When, as the story of Genesis chapter 2 explains, when Adam and Eve sinned and ate the forbidden fruit, all of humanity, all of creation actually, was affected by this fall. And we were corrupted by the sin that entered into the world. And so that's why we have evil in the world. That's why we have suffering. That's why all of life is affected by the decay that comes in our world. This is not the way God intended it to be. God intended everything to be perfect and holy and full of life and completely sustained and eternal. But because of sin, all of our lives are the opposite of that. You know, we grow up and we grow old and our bodies wear out and our backs get stiff, and sometimes our eyes don't sense things the way they were intended to. But in the new creation, all of that will be made perfect. We will be made absolutely perfect. So we will be able to see, we will be able to smell and to taste and to hear. We will be able to know one another in ways that we were never able to know them in this life. People will often ask me, another question is, will I know the people I love when I am in heaven? Well, in the kingdom of heaven, my friends, you will indeed know one another. How you will be able to recognize your loved ones, I don't know, because you have to think about that. You know, will they recognize you as a 70-year-old or as a 30-year-old or as a child? Perhaps they will see in you the very best qualities of every moment of your life. I don't know. But somehow we will be able to see the essence of who a person is. It will not just be recognizing the color of their hair and the shape of their face, but we will be able to see what really makes a person who they are, who God created them to be. And so we will know people in the kingdom of heaven better than we ever knew them on earth. And there's something else that sort of goes along with this idea. You know, we will have physical bodies, but we'll also live in a physical world. We often talk about dying and going to heaven. And then we don't really think about what that means. But when Jesus talks about heaven, he's really talking about the kingdom of heaven. And ultimately, it's not going to be up in the heavens. The kingdom of heaven is ultimately going to reign on earth. And this is what Scripture talks about. Whenever we talk about dying in the Bible, there's this idea, which is understandable, that we die and our physical body that we have used in this life is worn out. And you can go to a funeral and you might see someone in a coffin. Their body is there, but the person is no longer there. And we sort of express this as, that body has gone to heaven. The spirit has left the physical body. But ultimately, there will be a physical existence when when finally the Lord deems that the time is right, Christ will return and heaven will come on earth. And we read about this in Scripture. For instance, in the famous chapter from Revelation, the 21st chapter, listen to what it says in verses 1 through 4. It says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had disappeared, and the sea also was gone. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, like a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, 'Look, God's home is now among his people, and he will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever.'" So, it says there in that first verse, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. So not only will our bodies ultimately be changed, all of creation will be changed and recreated. Heaven above in the skies will be recreated, and the earth, this creation that we live on now in this life, will also be created new. For the old heaven and the old earth disappeared. The sea also is gone. And then in verse 2, it gives us this amazing image. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven like a bride dressed for her husband. So you get this image of the holy city, Jerusalem, descending from heaven and coming to rest upon the earth. So the physical Jerusalem that God's people, Israel, built is only a model, a foreshadowing of what is to come. And so the idea is that we are going to live on the earth in this holy city for all eternity. Now, I don't know exactly how that all works, but if God can raise a man from the dead, he can certainly recreate his creation any way that he likes and make anything possible. But the idea that I find most meaningful of all is thinking about the Garden of Eden. Because you know how I love the garden at my home. And I love nature. I love to hike. I love to fish. I love to be in the outdoors and experience the wonder of God's creation. I feel God's presence there. Always had, ever since I was a child. And some of the ways that God spoke to me most and revealed his presence to me were when I was in nature and seeing the wonderful beauty that he created and thinking about how it all works together so wonderfully. But in the book of Genesis, in the creation story, it tells us that God made Adam and Eve, and he placed them in this garden that was perfect, that had everything they needed. Well, one day, God is going to recreate heaven and earth, and we will be in paradise again. Do you remember what Jesus told the thief on the cross when they were there dying together? He said, when that thief, asked Jesus to remember him, Jesus said, "Today you will be in paradise with me." So he uses that word paradise, which goes right back to that image of the Garden of Eden. And so I like to think of heaven as being a return to Eden, where we first started, where everything was perfect, where everything was right, where we had everything that we needed, where we were totally vulnerable, but yet we felt completely safe. And because we were in the presence of God, and there was nothing to fear, for we were safe, and he was protecting us, and he was providing everything that we need. We're able to return to that paradise because of what Christ did for us on the cross. And so if you haven't done so, I pray that you will do so today. Get your heart right with God through Jesus Christ so that you can know and have complete assurance that when this life is over, you will be with God forever in the kingdom of heaven. Your body will be made whole and perfect. The creation around you will be made whole and perfect. And we will live in harmony with God and with each other forever and ever and ever. I hope that we will be there together, my friend. I also hope that this video was something that was helpful for you. If it was, would you give me a thumbs up? Would you share this video with someone who might need it? And if you've got any questions that you'd like for me to try to explain or answer, post those in the comments section, and I will try to address them in a future video. Thanks for watching today, my friends. Now let's all get out there and let's grow and be fruitful.